Good morning. Today we're going to talk about small group communication and conflict. And so if you're in my small group communication class, this is for you. We're going to talk about conflict. I'm going to go right to share screen. And this will be my lecture, and it'll probably be done in a couple parts. Here we go. Okay. So by now, I imagine you've had more than one experience of conflict with your group since you've been in your group for a few months now. Let me just say that, conflict is normal. It's a normal part of life. It's a normal part of experience in any relationships. When we have conflict, often it's with people that we care about, or we can have conflict with people we don't know, but the conflict that matters to us usually are people that are close to us. Let's define what conflict is. And I'm going to show you the definition, and then we're going to kind of go over what's the important part of it and the important points of that definition that you need to remember that's going to make sense for you. Okay, so there has to be a disagreement. It has to be an expressed disagreement too. So it can't be just a disagreement that you're imagining in your mind because you can imagine it, but until you express it to the other person, until it's expressed, meaning you have to verbally or non-verbally express it, the conflict doesn't occur. You may feel tension, but the conflict it has to be with at least one other person. So it has to be an expressed struggle. It has to be between at least two interdependent people. Remember that word interdependent means we rely upon each other. We need each other. We're important to each other. We're interdependent. Doesn't mean we're dependent. Okay, don't think that we're dependent. It just means that together we make something whole. So as a small group, you all are interdependent with each other. That's one of the variables, or one of the descriptions of a small group, is you become interdependent. So the whole becomes greater than your individual identities. You create your own identity. So ideally, in an expressed struggle or a conflict with someone, is you have an identity as your relationship is really makes you two or more people interdependent. You have to perceive in conflict, there's a perception of either incompatible goals, and it can be all three, or it can just be one of them. Incompatible goals, scarce resources, and interference. Okay, I'm going to give you like a simple one of conflict that you can feel. All right. Have you ever been, and I'm sure actually you might have all had this experience. Have you ever been home and let's say you've been home from college, and you went home from college and, or you went over to your parents' house, and your mom or your dad is the cook and they make something really good that you love. And you went to school and you came back from school and you were looking forward to having that leftover. Okay. But you have some siblings. And so when you go to the refrigerator, this is an example of scarce resources. You go to the refrigerator and you open the refrigerator up and you're like, where the heck is that lasagna? Oh man, I really wanted the chili rellenos. Or I was really looking to have a bowl of pozole. Or for me, I love lamb chops. Okay, I'd be really upset if the lamb chops were gone. So the point is, that's a conflict, right? And then you go maybe to your sibling because your mom and dad are at work, and you go to your sibling and you say, did you eat the last lamb chop? Did you eat the lasagna? Did you do any of that? And they're like, yeah, it was in there and it was leftovers. And so you express a struggle, there's scarce resources. And obviously you have incompatible goals because your goal is to eat it and now it's not there. And so that's a conflict. Now that's a simple conflict, no big deal conflict. You'll get over it unless you want to blow it into something else. But that's an example of when we think of scarce resources. There's not enough. Probably you could go out and buy some lamb chops and make some more or make some more lasagna. But this idea that there's not enough and your goal and the goal of the other person, they're not compatible. You're not on the same page. And there's some interference, right? Interference is keeping you from getting what you want. Right. So there you are. You're focused on achieving your goal and there's interference in getting what you want. And in this case, example I gave you was your sibling has interfered with your ability to get the food that you had planned on eating when you came home from school. Okay, moving on. So I love this. I like this visual. Why? Because that's how it feels. When you have conflict, it initially feels like you are butting heads with someone. So looking at the causes, sometimes conflict is just out of perception. Have you ever perceived a conflict that's not even there? Have you expressed conflict, expressed a struggle, or expressed something to someone that you're upset about, and you think they're acting a certain way, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? And then you start accusing them. Well, you just said this, and your tone was this way, and they're like, that's not what I meant. And suddenly now there's a conflict, and then they say, why are you always accusing me of things? And all of a sudden, right? This is around perception. This is even about like what you think is real. It's not even about what is real. It's about what you perceive to be real. Many conflicts occur like this. It could be a conflict that you have in personality. With different personalities. If you have two people that are really strong-willed in your group, they may clash, right? If you're a person, especially if you're not aware of your own strong personality and you just come across really like kind of a bulldozer, or you come across really dominant, it's going to be a problem, because if you have another dominant personality, you two are going to clash. Or you have two people that always want the attention, right? Those people could clash too. Okay. Conflicts when it comes to knowledge. Have you ever had a argument, because I have, about what you know? I love to do this with my partner. She'll say something and I'll say, no, that's not so-and-so. She's always thinking that some actor on TV isn't the actor. She'll say, that person was in this movie. And I go, no, it's not the same person. And she'll say, yes, it is. The other day, we had a conflict over who sings Dream On. It's an Aerosmith song, right? She thought it was a song by something else. And so what I love to do with her is I always go, I'll bet you. I bet her $15 this time, and I got $15. Usually I bet like $5. So you can have conflicts over knowledge. Now, this is a fun conflict. It was no big deal, right? The thing about knowledge is you can go find out what the answer is if it's a fact. But you can have conflicts over knowledge. It can be conflicts over what you think you should know and what you don't know. Conflicts over culture. That's something that all of us are really aware of, right? Our culture is our lens, the lens we see reality through. Okay, I'll say that again. Our culture is the lens we see our reality through. It is a lens. So you've grown up in this culture, American culture, right? And then you have your ethnic culture that also is part of that lens. You can look at it as two different lenses, or maybe the lenses are melded into one, right? But it is, in culture, we perceive then through that lens what's important to us. And we focus on certain things. If you, growing up in an American culture, especially living in Fresno, we are a car people. In American culture, we are car driving people. If you lived in a different country where people don't necessarily drive cars, or cars are not even part of their experience, it's not like that important. Like, cars are a sense of achievement for us. What kind of car you drive says something about like how you feel about the energy industry, right? If you have a hybrid or an electric car, what kind of car says about like if you have like a muscle car, you know, how macho you are or how athletic you are, or there's a masculinity piece there. So cars in our culture say a lot, but you could be in a different culture where it's not a car driving culture and you don't have that same lens. You see a car, it's just a car. But in our culture, if a car is a Camaro or a car is a Porsche or a car is a Prius, right? Our lens says that says something about the person. So again, this is an idea of how it can be cause of a conflict, because with our culture, we come with these prescribed ideas of what we think is important, and that can clash. Okay, power and status. I'm sure that you have already experienced this, and I'm going to be finishing on this slide, and then I'm going to cut this off pretty soon and go on to another lecture, or the same lecture, just another video. You have probably experienced the power and status maybe at your work. You could have experienced it at school. You could have experienced a conflict of power and status with me. You could have experienced it with, because I'm a teacher and you're a student, right? That's actually a common cause of conflict, is someone who has the power and someone who doesn't, right? And even status, we'll say, like in this culture, we'll say that everyone's equal, but we know economics place a lot of value on your class status and what you have and how you go about your life and all these things. So there can be a conflict there. So I'll just share a personal conflict that I always have, that I bring with me, right? A cause of conflict. It's my perception, but it's around power and status. So my background, I came from a fairly privileged background, and not like super duper rich, but my parents were wealthy. And I grew up that way, and I grew up around young people like that. And that's the way we learn to live and the way we learn to see. And we pretty much stuck to our own group of people, so we didn't know much different than that. Now, I left that and went to school in a place where everyone was different. And I was very much, I want to say, in quotes, the minority in terms of my race, in terms of my background, all of that. And so that experience made me open my eyes about things. And so now I see like the lack of value in the influence of economic status, and I would say that I like to call BS on it. And I usually bring this kind of conflict and attitude when I meet people that act like they're better than me or better than other people because they have money. And that's a source of conflict for me. And I can have an attitude, I'll bring that, again, my perception. And they could be a totally nice person, right? But I think that I have those prejudices. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Procedural expectations. I'm sure you've had that conflict already in the group, right? Go to secondary tension, right? Tension over task. How you expect things to run. Power and status, tertiary tension. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and we're going to continue on in the next presentation. And I will see you in a few minutes in the next video.